Say yes to the yes.
Creativity.
The creative process.
This is a full-body yes.
Seed, soil, plant.
It invites us to be courageous.
Coloring within the lines.
It invites us to be vulnerable.
Not really a creative act of the brain.
And apply it to our collective reality.
Hello, hello. Here we are, episode 71 of Truth Be Told, and what a day it is. So this month, April, we're looking at creativity, and this takes on so many different aspects. One, creativity in the artistic sense. What are we creating? What kind of beauty can we bring to the world? What ways can we express ourselves through other means? Creativity as in the way of, creation. How are we creating our lives, creating the world that we want to live in, and creating, again, more of that beauty? So creation really, it's a matter of expression, and we are the divine, little pieces of the divine, expressing the divine in this world. So the more intention we bring to that, the more enjoyment that we get to share with everyone all around in this world. So there's so much to this idea. We're going to have a lot of fun this month. So I hope you enjoy it. Sit back and take a look at Truth Be Told.
Creativity. What does it look like to live a life of everyday wonder, of creativity? I think this is an interesting word because for most of us, when we think of the word creativity, or at least for myself, when I think of the word creativity, the things that tend to come to mind are like the arts and crafts kind of creativity. That idea, like when you're a little kid and some adult deems whether you are creative or not. The kids that can draw well and color within the lines and do the art projects in art class exactly as they're supposed to be. Wow, they're really creative. You're really creative. And those of us who did not color in the lines very well, maybe creativity wasn't our thing, which is super ironic because those of us who were able to color within the lines really well, staying within those lines when we really get into the core of creativity. Coloring within the lines is not really a creative act of the brain. Not to say that we can't make art by following instructions, but the creativity, real creativity, creating something new, often means kind of getting outside of the lines and doing what we feel called to. And really, I think that is the core of creativity. When we look at this word creativity, from this much broader sense, creativity is following that urge within us. There is a saying by Emma Curtis Hopkins, who is a major influence on this philosophy. And she says something along the lines of, if you are the one to have the thought, you ought to know you're the one that needs to do it. How often do we have that creative idea, that way of doing something new, and then we kind of just sit on it? And well, someone else eventually usually ends up doing it. But there's no coincidence that we are the one having the thought to do that thing. We all have a message in us that is looking to come out. This creative idea that maybe was a seed long ago and has just been cultivating within us. And maybe it is that book. Maybe it is that new procedure. Maybe it is that new software. Maybe it is that thing that we can offer the community to help solve some major issue. We all have something within us that is yearning to come out, to express creatively. We're in fact actually driven by creativity. That is the nature of the universe that we live in. It is the nature that we have been created out of, right? The universe is creative. It is not destructive, it's creative. If it were destructive, it would have destroyed itself a long time ago. But it is creative. It keeps creating new. And we are made of and from and by that. So we then, in our nature, are creative beings. And so we're actually driven by creativity. It is part of our wholeness to create whatever it is that is looking to come through us. And maybe some of the time that's the fun, the things that are just for fun, but there's also that sense of creativity that is that thing that is bigger than we are, that message that is bigger than just us as an individual. It is that thing that will change lives. It is that thing that maybe it changes the world. Maybe it changes the community that you live in and onward. Maybe it's something that changes life for generations to come. Whatever it is, there is something looking to come through. And maybe it's a huge impact immediately. Maybe it's the butterfly effect. And it's one tiny little thing that we'll never live to see the real difference that it makes. But we know that it will. We each have that message, that thing that is looking to come through us. So creativity, certainly, yes, it is the arts and crafts. It is certainly more than that, and it shows up in a whole lot of different ways.
I loved so much of that.
Good.
Yeah, the Emma Curtis Hopkins, that's been one for me that in the past that was my MO, was like, somebody should do this. Somebody should do this. And I never did it. And then that's one thing that has shifted once I started learning more about myself, about the world, and about the creative process. Like, oh, I am that somebody. So
Yeah.
it's a powerful concept. Love it.
Yeah, well, that's where, like, when you marry the idea of Emma Curtis Hopkins with like the Mary Morrissey thing of like, it's not our failures that we're afraid of, it's our success. And like when those two ideas, wherever they overlap, it's like, oh, okay, here's the really big idea, and here is that voice that's like, you can't do that.
Well, y'all took mine, because that's exactly the thing that popped out for me, was that if you're having the voice that says do it, or this needs to be done, then it actually is maybe yours to do, or maybe yours to bring forth this idea. And I think, it's like, for me, you look at situations like, oh yeah, this would be great, and then I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's mine to do. And so that totally resonated when you said that. I was like, oh, damn, yep. Yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes. Because I think that's what happens. Those passions, those ideas, I mean, they're within us. And so there's like something like yearning to be brought forward. And I think it's that is that yearning, that stirring to see those out in the world.
Yeah. Well, that's why it fascinates me so much that, I think even within a philosophy like the science of mind, that when the word creativity comes up, like even here, even in this teaching, even in this philosophy, we have this tendency to go to like the creative, the artists, the musicians, the dancers, the crafts that we do as a hobby, right? Like, how do you fulfill your creative urge and all that? And it's like, yes, and like there's so much more to that. Like, yeah, we're all born creative. That doesn't mean you have to be sitting down sketching out pictures or painting or whatever. I don't know. I mean, like, that stuff's great, and for those of us that does fill that urge for, awesome. But I have, it's like I've always been the one to sit next to the person who hates. It's like, I'm not creative at all, or to be the one, I'm like, yeah, let's do like the instructions, like let's go by step or whatever, right? Yeah, it's just it's fascinating. It's fascinating to kind of like open our eyes up to if everything is creative,
Right?
What's the thing we're creating intentionally?
And we're always creating, and so it's like this goes back to what we talked about before, either by design or by default. And so if we are creative beings, like every day, every second we are creating
Yeah.
an experience. So why not be more intentional, or just be intentional in general, or even kind of entertain this conversation that we can intentionally create these experiences,
Yeah.
instead of default, which I probably do that 73% of the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, something that's very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to have to think about every little thing. But I think that when we understand that creativity, like you said, is beyond gluing popsicle sticks into log cabins. It's beyond. I mean, it is that too, but which is the extent of my crafting ability. But
Right.
it is more than that. It is taking something and making something out of it. I mean, that is what this creative process is.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Love that butterfly effect as well, like being intentional about what we create for the future. That's an idea you shared with me a little bit lately, Dan, and yeah, that's powerful stuff.
Was I just talking with you about the whole Back to the Future idea? Was that us? Yeah. So this thought that, like, all right, every time travel movie you've ever seen, what's the number one rule? You can't go back.
You don't mess with anything.
Exactly. You can't change anything.
Right.
You change the smallest detail, you come back to the future and we're like lizard people or something, right? Like everything's totally different. There's two suns. It's a desert planet. It's like we change it, like because you dropped a pencil or something, like
the space-time continuum.
Yeah, right. And like we all know this, and I mean, obviously it's movies, so like whatever. But
it's real.
It's so real, yeah. But like there is some truth to that. I mean, like that's a really solid theory. Why don't we have that same approach to what we are creating right now? Like what would happen if we took that intention, like that level of intention setting and that level of awareness in creating what's going on around us right now? Like everything I do right now, like every minute little detail is creating everything that happens. Now, that also means like if everything matters, nothing matters. And so we're still, I mean, there's that side of it too. But like, yeah, we could be so on purpose in setting like, oh, if I hold this door, it brings a smile to this person's face. They go and there's like videos about this, right? Like you hold the door, they get a smile, they go and smile to the cashier. The cashier now, like all of a sudden it perks up their mood. They don't quit. So now they pay their rent. They don't end up homeless. And I mean, like it's
like a butterfly.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Powerful
kind
stuff.
Of interesting. It is. How about a little more?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Say yes to the yes. This month we're talking about creativity, and I thought it would be important to talk about the creative process as described in the Science of Mind philosophy. The best analogy that I have heard to describe this is the seed, soil, plant analogy. So when a farmer wants to grow crops, they start with the seed, bury it in the soil, and then over time, a plant then emerges as the result. So how this works in the how thoughts become things order is that our thoughts are like the seed. And when we hold thoughts, we are planting them in our subconscious mind, which is always working behind the scenes to then create our reality. So we have our thought, which is the seed, goes into the soil, which is the subconscious mind, and then is manifest in our world like the plant. It's our reality. One thing, like the universe only knows yes. So the thoughts that we hold, it would behoove us to pay attention to the thoughts that we hold, because the ones that are most predominant tend to result in our physical experience. When you plant an apple seed, you don't get a tomato bush, you get a tomato vine, you get an apple tree. The universe only responds as to what we put into it. So moving forward, once we become aware of this, this is a powerful tool to help shape and shift our reality, what we experience in life. Have you ever noticed, like, some people that just seem to, no matter what they do, they come out on top. They have this mindset that they just know. It's a knowing. Like, their subconscious is so programmed that they are always going to find the solution. They're always going to find success, that they go out into the world and manifest that. Just seem to show up. That's what's happening behind the scenes. That's where what we call the subconscious, refer to it as the subjective. It's the creative mechanism of the universe that we use on an individual level as well as the collective level. Now, this all began before any physical reality, before what we believe to be was the Big Bang. So that universal thing, the first thing to exist was consciousness, and it wanted to know itself. So it had an idea of, in order to know itself, I have to interact with myself. So I'm going to create this physical reality out of myself. And consciousness then created it all. And every little thing, all of us, we are infinite pieces of that same consciousness. So the more that we learn and develop in this process, the more powerful we become in manifesting and creating our reality. So it is important to be aware of what thoughts we're holding on to, because the universe only says yes. So if we are holding thoughts of, I don't want to fail at this job again, the universe hears fail at this job and says yes. And it's going to subconsciously direct us in ways that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, where we end up taking actions that lead to that. Whereas if we're holding thoughts of, I want to be successful this time at this job, and really believe it and plant those seeds over and over, and this is why affirmations can have a powerful effect, our subconscious mind then starts pointing us to the things that help support that thought, that seed that we have planted in our soil. It's a powerful process. The one thing that we never want to do is use this as a tool of guilt, shame, or blame for anything that is happening in your life. A lot of times we'll hear people in this philosophy talk about, like, well, you must have manifested that by holding on to some sort of thoughts. That's not productive. It doesn't help anything. We just want to encourage this as a tool moving forward. Now, for everybody out there already steeped in the science of mind philosophy, you've been doing this for a long time, and it's pretty powerful. Like, once you become aware of it, we start to see results like right away. The classic example is the parking space. Just start visualizing that parking space, just to play with the universe and see how little things show up when we hold that seed. So moving forward, if you've been doing this work for a while, you're already well steeped into it, and you believe and you know that the universe is working on that individual level. Well, here we are at a place in time in our collective existence where we believe the shift in consciousness seems to be accelerating. We seem to be really be getting to a place to where we can see massive change on the planet. The things that have happened in the last couple of years really point to lots of shifts in the old paradigms and moving into a new way. So now it's time to really take this concept of the creative process and apply it to our collective reality, to start to plant those seeds of what it looks like to have a world that works for everyone. We've talked about that. It's our catchphrase that we've used for decades in Centers for Spiritual Living. It's time to really start visualizing. What's that mean? How does it work? How does it work for that person that wants things opposite of what I want? How can that maybe work together and play together? There's a way, but we have to start to visualize it and believe that it's possible. And as we do that, we start to then take the action that leads to creating that. We are the creative process of the universe. That what we call the subconscious, the subjective, is always working, and it works through us and many other ways. So this is it can only be a communal thing. So take this idea, apply it to the bigger world around us, and let's see what kind of changes come about in the near future.
plant.
Yeah. Seed, soil, plant.
Yeah, seed, soil, plant. I mean, isn't that the answer to everything?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's just such a beautiful like explanation of the power that we have that um to change not only our experience, but actually then begin to see that change outpictured in the world. And the other day we were going around somewhere and we needed a parking space. We were going to the Cherry Blossom Festival in DC, which there's a lot of folk that are doing that, and we could not find a parking space. So we were like, oh, what about trying to manifest the parking space?
Yeah.
And we ended up manifesting this parking space. Actually, we had to pay $19 for it, but still, it was exactly where it needed to be. It was very easy to get to and to come back to. And so it is, I think we talk about that in jest, but I think it is, sometimes we have to do that, kind of like build our confidence, build our spiritual, like the muscles around, these sort of creative activities, that we do have the power when, and it's not like this kind of trick, but instead it's that kind of focusing our attention on the things that we want and less about the things that we don't want. And that can be parking spaces, or that can be experiences, that can be how we show up. I want to show up as a loving person. And so if that is my focus, is to show up as a loving person, then that becomes more and more the reality, instead of, I don't want to be this, but I want to be this, so that's an interesting energy shift. But I think that which we put our energy towards, and our focus and our attention, dare I say, gaze, those are the things that we kind of call into our experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always love, I mean, just the seed, soil, plant metaphor. It's so simple. And it's like, I remember hearing that like day one, maybe it was day two, I don't know. But, like I got into class and that was, we learned the creative process, and it's that simple. It's like this seed, soil, plant, the seed that you plant, and, you water and give it all the nutrient, whatever it needs, that's what you're going to get. And you don't dig it up and check it every once in a while to make sure it's still there, that it's, like you plant it and leave it. And, yeah. Is it still there? Is it still going to grow? Yeah.
I remember on the oral panels for ministerial, they asked, all these different like hard questions, and all of a sudden and I answered those, and then they asked, can you explain the creative process? And I like blanked, and then all of a sudden I said, seed, soil, plant. And that was like, that's the part I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so simple, and yet, I mean, it also is so, like, that's one of those metaphors that just like, it's got some depth to it. But, I mean, Chris, you also mentioned this idea of, not that we should stop tending our own garden, but that we also realize, like, what we thought was our garden is a communal garden. We really need to start tending the communal garden, right? Like, let's use this to start creating that collective experience. And I think that's a really big idea, that for whatever reason seems new. Like, it just seems like it's this new emerging idea of like, oh yeah, we should care about each other and actually do things from that mindset. Huh.
Okay, so like my experience, like noticing, like once I began to become aware of how our thoughts really do kind of shape what happens for our future, like looking back at how all that unintentional thought just kind of occurs, like in not chaos, but just random stuff that is created in my life, that people in general just kind of at the whim of the thoughts and the processes going on around them. Then we learn we can be more intentional. But yes, now it's so, until we really start to apply this to the community or communal level, that's kind of where we're at. We're kind of just bouncing around on the whims and the consciousness of everybody. Like, wait a minute, we've got a pretty powerful, strong, sizable group of people that are very intentional with their thoughts, but we haven't necessarily coordinated that into like collaboration.
It's really interesting too, because I've for several years already have had this image in my mind because I think that for whatever reason, there's a lot of confusion about like the perception of, oh, well, this works really well for some people and not for other people, and like, what am I doing wrong? And right, and that idea that like we do tend to plant seeds and then dig them up like daily to make sure that they're still, it's like, well, they're not growing if you're digging it up, right? But I have this working theory that there are in for this particular idea that there are 3 different types of experiences, and the first is, and this kind of speaks to kingdom of consciousness, right? Like the first is, so imagine we're in a river and we're all in our own little inflatable rafts or whatever, and everybody's been given paddles, and so everyone's been given all of the necessary things. But depending on where you enter the river, and depending on what's around you in the river, and depending on a lot of different other elements out of our control, we all have different experiences, right? The part that we do have the ability to affect is how we manage ourselves in the river. And so there's the experience of the people who are like, this river's out of control and I have no idea what's going on, and we're just like getting thrown around by the way, the white water and the rocks and other boats, right? And then there's people who are like so determined to control their experience that they're paddling through other people in the boats, right? And so they're working so much harder than maybe necessary, and just paddling through people, getting to, they're so determined to get to where they're trying to get to. They're not being mindful of other boats around them. And so they're like capsizing other people. And, the people who are like getting thrown all over, they're getting capsized by these people who are just like, crazy paddling their way down the river. And then there's the third option, which is the people who realize, as hard as I paddle, like, sure, we could try and paddle upstream if we wanted, but as much as I paddle the water, it's still the easiest way is going with the flow and moving out of the way of the people who are trying to paddle through us. And so there's like this ease and grace in which, right. And so I think that really is kind of how it all works out. And on top of that, for every single one of those people, the way they view what's happening becomes true for them.
Yeah.
Because the universe is no respecter of persons, right? Like the universe just like, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, that's what you think. That's the way it's going to show up. That's what you want. Yeah, that's what you're going to get.
And you get a car, and you get a car.
Yeah, and so the what's happening people continue get what's happening, and this is crazy. And the people who are paddling really hard keep getting situations where they need to keep paddling really hard, and so everybody kind of keeps getting moved by the flow that is the river.
Yeah.
And it keeps creating the most ideal situation for whatever it is that the people in the river believe.
Yeah.
And so if you're one of the ones who believe like, oh, I can use my paddle, I can just kind of coast down this river and use my paddle to steer or get myself out of the way or whatever, right? But it's like the river is still there providing, yeah, right? So row your boat, Actually, so Tom Sanner, one of the professors in ministerial school, does this bit on row your boat for, you row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. So for every 3 rows you get an extra merrily. That's the grace of, in Christian world, that's the grace of God, right? Like that's the ease and grace at which life creates. If you give 3 paddles, life gives you back 4 of whatever it is you think you're putting into it. Anyway,
I like it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's seed soil plant too, right? Like that's it moves everything into the perfect place. And that's how we end up with these things that seem like coincidence and people ending up in the exact right place and all the things we need just being there,
And then we're surprised every time.
And then we're every time, which, I mean, that's all right too.
I like being surprised.
It's kind of fun.
The row.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. I was just going to say the row your boat is awesome. I heard KRS-One talking about that too. That like that's kind of secret code from the illumined ones of how to live. Like, who wrote that song? I don't know, but it's a message that was delivered cryptically, like the parables.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Good stuff. All right, thanks.
So we are not done yet. Just want to take a little bit of moment and let you know a little bit about SEC and how you can get involved in whatever way works for you. And so Soul Evolution Collaborative is an innovative and a spiritual collaborative dedicated to personal transformation and communal evolution. And so there's a few quick ways that you can get involved with this community. So of course, if you're watching right now, that you know this is our Tuesday evening program where we get to just have a lot of fun. And this is Truth Be Told. It's on Tuesdays at 7 Eastern. You can watch it live or you can catch us on the replay. On Thursdays, we have the gathering at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And this is a group experience where we kind of take the ideas of the week and we come together and share our experiences about it. It's a great opportunity for us to learn a little bit about each other and ultimately learn a lot about ourselves and how we can grow together in this community. And Sunday we have at 12:30, we have Strip Down Sunday, and where we offer this kind of streamlined approach to your Sunday morning experience where we offer an inspirational message about the topic of the week. And coming soon is our second Sunday experience. That will be Sunday evening, so stay tuned for more information about that. And so to get more information about these events and so much more, check out soulevolutioncollaborative.org. You can sign up on our email list to get information. You can check out some of the evergreen videos and kind of explore what we have going on at SEC. And now, back to Truth Be Told.
So any conversation about creativity, I believe, starts with this important conversation about the yes. Now, this is not a yes that is, saying yes when we really mean no, or this is not a yes that out of obligation or yes out of, any of those sorts of things. But instead, this is a full-body yes. This is a yes that invites us to step into places maybe we've never stepped before. It invites us to be courageous. It invites us to be vulnerable. It invites us to be our authentic selves and to express that in ways maybe we've not done before. So instead, this is a full body yes. And this full body yes really is the starting point of creativity. It's the starting point of expansion. It's the starting point of transformation. And I think that's what we're all here to do, is to continue to learn, continue to grow, and continue to evolve. And so we do this by stepping into our life in bold and adventurous ways. Now, for me, I can often get stuck in my own way of doing things, get stuck in my own rut, whether it's rut of eating or rut of doing the certain things or believing a certain thing or acting out of a certain space. We can all do that, and that's natural. But instead, the call of the yes is to step fully into an experience when we may not know the outcome, when there may be uncertainty, when there may be challenge, when there may be fear, because we've never done this before. And so if we can take a moment, if we can pause, if we can go within and we can say yes in the midst of fear, say yes in the midst of challenge, say yes in the midst of, I'm not sure how that's going to go. An interesting thing happens. We expand. This limitless possibilities that we talk about the universe actually then becomes activated in our own life. And so this yes creates this expansion, creates this evolution, creates this space for us to step into. And I'm not saying it's always easy, but I do think that it is the birthplace of creativity. This yes, this bold step in doing and saying and thinking and believing things we never thought possible. And it's in that space that we can truly understand this activating factor of creativity. And this may show up in ways, it may show up in artistic ways, it may show up in ways of leadership, it may show up in ways of relationship. Creativity shows up in all these ways when we are willing to step out and say yes. And in doing that, we activate this creative process, we activate this focused attention on what can be. And then the possibilities truly are limitless. And then we can participate in the creative nature of the universe. And then that's where the fun begins.
That got blown off of the mountain.
It looked like it, sounded like it.
That
would have been a funny video, though.
I was on location, as you can tell.
It was a good location. I was a little envious. I missed the mountains.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I love the idea of the full body yes. We used to call it the hell yes or the
holy no.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But that's such a powerful idea. I think we have this thing in society where we want to like people please, and everybody's got a little bit of it, at least. I mean, in varying degrees, but this idea of people pleasing and not wanting to say no, and so we kind of just say yes to things we don't want to do, and like it's not culturally or societally acceptable to just be like, oh yeah, that's really not something I want to do.
Right, like honesty and authenticity is.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, then you end up being resentful as hell, and then that's not good. I've done that. I mean, I've lived a large portion of my life in that saying yes to people ask me to do things. Yes, I'll do this, I'll do that, and then I end up being like so overwhelmed and like exhausted, and then I just end up being bitter and resentful, and and so then I can't show up as my best self because I have this. And so when I've recognized my own worth and value, then I can say yes when it's something that stirs passion, or it's something that I is congruent with my values, or I can say yes, and then I can show up fully, and not be that that kind of bitter person in the corner, like thinking, oh my God, one more thing I have to do.
Yeah. And I think there is a we tend to think of yes and no as like opposites, and that saying yes to something is good and saying no to something is bad. But I actually think there's so much more the same than they are opposite.
Oh yeah.
Because a really like a full-bodied, like for a lot of things, anything that's not a hell yes is an F no.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then in the no there is a yes. You're saying yes to something. Yeah.
Right. Else. Yeah, exactly. So that the saying no to this is saying yes to my boundaries, saying yes to my peace, saying yes to the other thing I already said I would do, saying yes to, like we're not, and even in the no, it's not a no. Somebody asks you to go somewhere with them and you really don't want to. It's not a no to that person. It's not a personal thing. It's a yes to, I want to maintain this relationship, whatever that is. Right. Yes to the bigger idea. I don't want to lie to you. Yes to, I don't want to go with you and be miserable when you could go with someone else that's going to have fun.
Well, and more to the context of the video. I mean, this goes beyond this kind of yes and no. It goes to this idea that if we want to step out in ways that are creative, if we want to step out in ways that maybe aren't comfortable because we've never done it before, we do have to have that yes, that yes to doing something despite the uncertainty, that yes to doing something despite the fear or worry of how it may turn out. So it's and so then that also is a full body yes. But in that yes and that stepping out, then there's this expanding sort of this expansion thing, this expanding our our ways of being, our ways of operating. And so it's that yes as well. Saying yes to not living from fear all the time. And I mean, we all have fear and uncertainty, but stepping out despite that sometimes is where that really cutting edge of creativity is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes to everything that you both said. That's all like very eye-opening and wise. I want to address with that the idea of the resentment. You know, when we are afraid to say no because we don't want to offend them, we don't want them to feel the resentment, but then we go and do the thing we didn't really want to do, or end up making up some lie why we can't or something. And then so in order to save them the resentment, we take the resentment onto ourselves. And that's, not great. But then, like, as I think about it further, like when somebody tells me like, no, they can't do something, or no, they don't want to do something, especially after being introduced to this idea, I don't hold a resentment. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, that's fine. I wouldn't want you to come do that with me anyway if you didn't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask a favor of you if you don't, wholeheartedly want to participate, and I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't. So like we kind of like make this assumption like we don't want them to resent us, but would they really? Like if we were just honest and just said, not this time, but thanks for asking. Next time, please, don't hesitate to ask again.
Right. Yeah.
Well, what's really interesting about that too is kind of coming full circle again back to the creativity aspect of it, is that same thing I think plays out internally with our creativity, right? It's like we don't do the creative thing, or we don't do the new thing that's stepping out of the box, and then we feel guilty about it. And then so the next time something comes up, we have that experience of feeling guilty. So then we're like almost guilt ourselves into doing the thing, but it's not a thing we really wanted to do. It's just the next thing that came up, right? So we have like this weird internal dialogue a lot of the time in the same way that when we really embrace that full body yes, the hell yes, to like, is this the thing that I can fully embrace doing? Like, is this my next greatest creative step? Whatever the thing is, right? And if it's not the hell yes, then like that's our gauge to like, all right, we could try and do that thing because we want to be doing something, but like it's probably going to be another project where we're either going to like sell ourselves short on or stop halfway through or whatever. But like, it's the one thing, it's the book that we finally sit down, decide to write. And what moves us through actually fulfilling, following through and writing that book is that yes from the beginning. That was like, oh yeah, this is the message. Hell yeah. This is the one. I'm going to sit down and actually write this whole book.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's the other book that we tried to write that we're like, well, I'm not, yeah, I know there's a book. I really should write this. And like, I want to, but okay. And so we have that same thing inside of us. It's weird.
And I mean, the more, you were talking, it made me think about, it's like authenticity. It's like this authenticity kind of is the key to that. When we show up authentically, when we, then our yeses are yeses and our nos are nos. And we have this experience that's really in alignment with who we are and how we want to show up. And so it's like, I mean, not only is the yes kind of the birthplace of creativity, it seems like also authenticity is too, because then that kind of creates this backdrop for us to really explore those aspects of ourselves when we make this intention to show up authentically.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all good stuff.
It is good stuff. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us on Truth Be Told. This is going to be an amazing month because I know we are excited about creativity. And so, as you may know, or maybe just finding out, we think we have the absolute most amazing job in the world. And we absolutely love to follow you and have fun with you in these topics, exploring them every week. So it is our desire to not only share what we have learned, but to journey along with you, side by side, each one of you, as we navigate this adventure we call life. Our mission at the Soul Evolution Collaborative is to bring forth the wisdom of ancient teachings and spiritual principle in a new and innovative way. So if you would like to support this mission and its continued evolution, we invite you to do so at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. You can click on the donate button in the menu. All donations are tax deductible and serve to support this evolving ministry in its vision of personal transformation and communal evolution. So thank you again for tuning in. For some of you, we'll see you Thursday. For everyone else, we'll see you next week.